Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 2. This is for Flight Centre, headquartered in Brisbane, Australia, but they are a global company trading under many names. I think it's Liberty Travel in the States. Anyway, everything about the company internally screams cringe. Everyone treats the CEO like a effing god. His name is Screw, and when he takes a selfie, it's called a scroofy, and they opened a foreign exchange ATM at the head office that they called a screw TM, which sounds like scrotum, if you ask me. It's effing ridiculous. My last job was for a large cinema chain. The incentive of working there was free movies and great culture with the colleagues. This seemed great on paper. There were 5 pillars of the company, a newish thing, since they were bought out, one of them being fun. Now I worked at one of the largest branches in the company, with 50-ish employees at the time. Every morning before we opened the doors, the managers made us huddle together, like a football team, and gave us our morning pep talk. Alright guys, listen up. Today is going to be great. We've got the new X movie, and whoever sells the most of Y promotional item gets a free soda drink. Woo! Go go go, it's going to be amazing. Can you top this week's record for best reviews? Whoever gets the most good reviews today gets a free popcorn. Whoa. Man. I hated it so much. No one cared, but they preached this speech at the beginning of every shift change, despite every single employee being completely deadpan. It was like a school care worker trying to get adults to play bricks and build the tallest tower. Awful. Last year I was working as a subcontractor, and I was assigned a new place of work. Just 2 weeks after I started, the new boss wanted to hire me. He put down the contract, where compared to my current contract, pay was down 25%, average weekly hours went up by 20%, vacation days went down by 10%, and I wouldn't have a company car for personal use anymore. Before he actually handed me the contract to read it, he said, "I will only make you this offer once, but it's only valid if you change all your pictures on your social media, and you sell your car. It's too flashy for our company." How about no? I was at a fast casual restaurant for a couple months, and the GM always talked about the culture. You know what's a great culture? When the morning shift and night shift have their daily screaming matches over shit that they each accuse the other one of needing to do. It was impressive, just how incompetent the entire company was, from ownership down. When I had to phone around to the corporation leaders to find out why none of the mechanics I had interviewed were hired. The mechanics have come from all over the country, and some had waited patiently for months to know if they got the job or not. Turned out, the CEO had changed his mind and wanted me to take care of all mechanic work. I was a factory manager. But they knew I'd be upset, so neither he, HR, or the COO wanted to be the one to tell me. My boss came up with a campaign called Smovers, Smile and Move. We needed to be Smovers and encourage other associates to be happier that they worked for a dead-end retail corporate job. He gave us bracelets to wear and little cards to keep on our person at all time. Like, we worked at a shitty timeshare property with owners who owned part of a small, independent timeshare in the early 2000s that was bought out by a huge hotel conglomerate that destroyed the entire aesthetic of what they originally invested into. So, these are embittered, hateful people, always wanting refunds for silly shit, like a broken treadmill in the gym. Literally had a grown-ass man, followed by his wife, an hour later, yelling, raised voices in the lobby, at my young visibly pregnant self, because a lifeguard moved their towel from their beach chair after they left for 2 hours, to take a nap in their room. On the 4th of July, while we're at full capacity, LOL. On top of the daily emails reminding us that working for Wyndham was the best choice we've ever made in life, and constant reminders from upper management, what our mission in life, your life's purpose. The reason you were born was to reason on a daily basis with unreasonable garbage humans, as hard as you can, until they give us a 5 on their surveys. I declined all requests for transfers, and just got out as fast as I could. Pizza Hut. Where will Pizza Hut take you? During the interview I was told, the work is hard, but we feel like a family, and we can always bitch about the bad customers after a shift. The people there were horrible. The managers made you do 2 people's jobs for less money. I was paid minimum wage for my age, for an hour, and the company purposely brought on 16-year-olds for that reason. I was also told that they didn't have enough money to pay me, so my shift was cancelled. I was told I'd be paid to complete my training, and I wasn't. Our manager would fling the corks of Prosecco bottles at the waitresses to make them scared. There would be regular breakdowns from cooks and waiters. I would regularly get screamed at in front of the whole restaurant, for silly things like the knives and forks not being straight enough, even though they would leave me by myself, as in, I was the only waiter still working, 1 week after my first shift. The waitresses would always bitch about the other people in the restaurant, and would shout at me for asking questions, even on my first day. At one point, an outside chef was brought in from a different restaurant, and he didn't realize he had to wash up cutlery, because he doesn't have to as his place. That's an entirely separate job. So, we ran out of cutlery, and the two more experienced waitresses, instead of helping me in washing up the cutlery, or teaching me how to do it myself, would just hoard the cutlery, so it was me that would run out, then my manager would have another go at me. F that place. I worked for a company that prides itself on being in the top 100 places to work in the US. They bought the hospital I was working for currently, while I was doing IT work there. For a year, they let me stay at the current hospital I was at. I worked with a team for countless hours, getting ready to switch out IT infrastructure over to match the place's new software, etc. We changed out all 900 computers at our location. After that was done, I was then told that in the next few months, I would have to commute to the main campus to keep my job a drive that for me was over 5 hours round trip. They did not offer me to transfer, or even pay compensation for driving there. I was literally forced to quit at this point. All because a new manager took over on the new fiscal year and decided that the IT department I was in needed to all be at the main campus. This is considered constructive dismissal, and you are eligible for unemployment benefits. Hearing our CEO say, compensation is only one part of the employment experience, during an earnings call, when he was answering complaints about underpaying his employees, after we reported record profits. I worked at an animal hospital that wanted to be, and probably is, to some, the best hospital in the city. Had the most modern equipment, looked incredibly nice inside, good Yelp ratings, etc. On top of that, we were told during hiring that we were a huge family, and everyone loved each other. This couldn't be more wrong. This place was the epitome of superficial. The turnaround rate was out of control, and people absolutely hated each other. The pay was horrible, even though we charged double the amount of any other hospital for our extensive care. I give management some credit for their effort, but it was more about hiding issues instead of addressing them. We couldn't talk about our concerns because it was considered gossip, and people were fired frequently for this. And apparently, they've now put audio recording throughout the hospital to listen in on employees' conversations. I honestly don't know how anyone still works there. I was seen as the poor kid in the group because I hadn't been able to buy $600 worth of tools the first month. Come in my first, and only, review, it went something like this. Manager, okay, you haven't been able to afford the required toolkit, so that's worked against your performance review. Also, you need to improve. Me, okay, what do you mean by improve? Manager, you just need to improve. Me, okay, I get that, I need to improve. Like, what specifically is an example of that? Manager, we've tried pairing you with a variety of techs, and they agree you need to improve. Me, okay, name a recent job where I could have improved. Manager, the generic name, contract. Me, alright, what specifically about that contract could I have improved on? Can I have an example? Manager, you just need to improve. Now, I've already said that repeatedly now. You need to stop making me repeat myself. Me, oh, you're right, I agree, I think I do need to stop. Stop working here. I'm out. I worked in a call center for the Big Four. My personal moment was when I got my $2,000 bonus withheld. I was 22, so it wasn't chump change, because I had to stop taking calls and answer our new hires' questions. My bosses would be missing in action for 4 hours at a time, and people needed help. I figured it showed initiative and also kept the operation moving along, since I was one of the top 10 reps they had. I was mistaken. I feel for you. It sucks to have to pick up the pieces of a broken management. Most bad managers are also territorial and easily threatened. A horrible combination for someone in a powerful position. My manager isn't doing well with our hires, either. He came up to my coworker and I, to ask us, to give the new guy something to do. It was his third day, so, I figured, he could start packing with us. After all, he had been the previous 2 days. I found out, my manager didn't even show him our software properly. The most crucial difference is the view. We change it when we ship. Apparently, my manager has been watching this guy pack up stuff, and has never corrected him, or even informed him about it. Our second to last hire also had no idea about this different view. I showed her on her second month. This girl also had been hit on relentlessly, to the point of having a coworker go up to her in front of the manager and ask her about her partner. After the manager found out she wasn't single like he thought, he didn't teach her much and just let her do her thing. Yet my manager walks around the office like he owns this shit, complaining about the problems new hires are causing to the girl he's effing in the office. He also said out loud he might be mean to a girl that might get hired just because she's family with the owner. He doesn't want any of them in her office. I have no idea how this FS still has a higher up job. It was a union job. Roughly 150 union employees and 50 company employees. The company always said how the people were their most important asset, yet they segregated themselves by having a Christmas party just for them. No union allowed. I'm unionized. Your local should at least try to put on events sometimes. Hold meetings in a bar, or just go out and party. Being in a union should come with a cultural component. And management can have their shit party. Got hired on that the company treats everyone like family, and everyone has each other's backs. You're allowed to call out 6 times in a year period, before termination, which is reasonable. When trying to acquire an ADA, to accommodate for days missed due to an illness, my manager tried to talk me out of getting it, saying it would look bad on my part. Went through the steps of getting the ADA, and then got threatened with termination for missing days, because my calling off clearly wasn't related to my illness. Called out my manager for not working with my accommodation. He just shrugged and said that sometimes getting fired builds character. You're allowed to call out 6 times in a year period, before termination, which is reasonable. Only in the US is this reasonable. In other countries, you're sick when you're sick. And then you stay home and get better. You may have to provide a doctor's note in some cases, but that's it. I was told by management that because I was part-time, I had to work extra hours. Granted, the money was good, but the exploitation wasn't fun. F Hilton, and F working in hotels. It can be truly rewarding at times, but it's mostly 12-hour days working to please idiots. When I was bullied into working 76 hours a week, because they could find other managers to cover the shifts, but when I went on stress leave, they miraculously managed to get all my hours covered, with no one else working over 38 hours. I worked at a popular travel stop/oversized gas station. It's practically a state icon. They are famous for their good wages for a low-income job. There's a huge sign over every entry, with the starting wages around $13 per hour, in a state where minimum wage is $7.25. Customers think it's a great place to work. They literally fired a girl for having a stroke. Edit. So, I actually didn't expect people to see this. Sorry it's taken so long to respond. I wrote this right before I got off my grave shift. I can't say I've had a job where I needed to get out, but I've had a few that set unrealistic or dishonest expectations for their culture. Got a job at a warehouse just out of high school. On orientation day, they told us all that we believe that you don't live to work. You work so that you can live. Then they scheduled me 70 hours a week. Fortunately, that was just a summer job. In college, I worked at Wendy's, and they kept telling us that we were a family. I remember thinking, nope. You're just the means by which I pay my bills, while I get an education. I won't even remember half of you, within a year of quitting. I was right. I had just finished a 108-hour week, because a server got hacked. The server in question was one I warned them about, and said it was vulnerable, and we also had no contingency plan if it went down. But a 5K server just wasn't in the budget, which we ended up getting when it got compromised anyways. So, I go in and ask for some comp time, since I'm salaried. They told me I could leave at 2-3 hours early, on a Friday, sometime. Things turned out good though. I left for a job with better pay and I'm still there 4 years later. I just worked a 60-hour week due to a deadline, but of my own accord. No one said I had to. My boss told me to take Friday off and not use any PTO on his own initiative. I didn't even ask for it. When I was promoted multiple times into roles requiring much more skill and knowledge, but my salary actually got smaller because my work wasn't sales oriented and therefore not making the company any money directly. This is at a multi-million-dollar company where most of the employees don't work in sales. Unlimited vacation policy had fine print that it had to be max 2-week chunks. Birth of second baby was coming up, so I planned paternity leave, and this detail came up. I got a bunch of pushback, and finally settled on 2 weeks full away, plus 2 weeks half-time. About the same time, I hear from a coworker who is planning a big trip to Europe for some festival, and she will be gone 3 weeks. I asked if she got any pushback about the vacation policy. Nope. So, the lesson was attending a music festival is more important than fathering a newborn. I worked for the cable company Shaw. They spent years talking about how they were better and how well they treated their employees. Then systematically changed all their policies because other companies are doing it. They basically took the list of things we were happy about and used it as a checklist of things to change. I used to work for a mobile phone store. Their motto was, independent impartial advice, and this was printed on all company literature and signage. Commission was roughly equal for whatever brand you were selling, in that price range, and they had all the carriers. Other stores would only stock from the carriers they could get the best wholesale deals from, and push the one that they had the best current deal for. Then one day, this all changed overnight. The company moved to the same model all the competitors had. The same phone on one carrier could be the same price as another, but earn 3x the commission, so salesmen would try and sell that one. Even if the area local to their store had shitty reception, they dropped one of the popular networks that didn't give them such good deals. Yet, they didn't change the motto or the signage. This was basically the point I realized the mobile phone market had reached 95% plus saturation and was out of there within 3 months. We have a great culture. Lots of team lunches and drinks. When I started, our boss had banned the social club, birthday celebrations, or recognition of birthdays, strictly no cake, taken away the Christmas party, the Christmas break period, and tried to stop people talking to each other. All the while, she'd take every second day off, and have long weekends, every weekend. We had maybe 3 team lunches in the time I was there, and she always made sure to tell us that we wouldn't be paid for anything over our lunch break, even though she came too. We had to submit manual timesheet corrections to remove the amount we took. It's like, okay, fair enough, but can't you just let it slide? It's not your money, and we're talking maybe 20 minutes here. A client also invited me to their Christmas party, due to our close relationship, and my good work on their files, and she called them and told them I wasn't allowed to go. She told me it was because she was concerned I might reflect badly on the department. Ironic, really. The minute the insurance stopped paying, all treatments for cancer would cease, even though we provided a mother standard of care. Meaning, to treat every patient as if it were your own mother. And when a patient passed away, there was no morgue to put the remains in. It was more of a, call a funeral home, make arrangements, and get out, attitude. 20 minutes into the recruitment process, the oily-haired suit started talking about the umbrella company that owned them, as being a family, and going on about loyalty, and pride, and camaraderie. I was just thinking, dude, you sell low-end junk to people, too dumb, or too poor, to go to your competitor. Your staff are mostly here because they can't get jobs elsewhere. Then I thought, why the F am I here? I sat through his bullshit for a couple of hours, for some reason, then smiled, shook his hand, told him I looked forward to joining his company, and promptly effed off to do volunteer charity work in Tanzania. When your company is so bad, it makes someone want to go do volunteer work. You gotta rethink your business strategy. I worked for a small company, and found out 2 weeks in, their entire business model was based on theft. The owner later went to prison, long after I left. My family had hooked me up with the job, because they said this guy was so great and so successful. It didn't help matters that he was a completely mean person. He'd harass employees. One day, he did an unplanned impromptu roast, and poked fun at the receptionist's weight. That did not go over well. He was literally like Michael Scott, without any of the charm. I didn't have my CPA license yet, but I had some accounting experience from college, so I was able to GTFO relatively quickly. I put in my resignation, and my family was pissed, but see, they didn't know about the fraud aspect. They thought I was being irresponsible. When he was later hauled into federal court, on criminal charges, they still defended him, but at least they understood. Just in case anyone wanted to know. The whole business model revolved around taking $1,500 Dell desktops, and $4,000 servers, installing stolen medical software, and selling them for $35,000 to $45K to small community hospitals. He would then sell $10,000 service contracts, for repair, to avoid having the hospital IT staff from calling the software companies. He eventually got busted when a hospital realized they spent a good chunk of change on unlicensed, pirated software. Oh, lots of examples. I've had a string of shitty jobs. I'll just got beat up at work, worked at a bar, and the owner wouldn't even give me $100 for my copay on my wife's insurance. He gave me none. When the CTO was showing some investors through the building, and said, "Oh, this wasn't finished, 'cause of Robert throwing me under the bus," in front of them. When I went to a customer site to install my company's software, and something went wrong, and my boss decided he didn't have to return my calls and emails for help, I ended up going around him by pulling a ticket with our internal IT department. When I realized, because I was the big man, that I'd be tasked to do 99% of the labor tasks, like assembling shelves and desks, while my puny little coworkers avoided it like the plague. When unlimited vacation wasn't. When the owner ignored his workers' suggestions, then hired a convicted CM as a new manager, who basically did everything that had been suggested before by everyone else. A lot of people left in disgust. Management consulting. People, due to the work lifestyle, tend to be in a bubble of co-workers who are young, 20s, and financially successful, therefore, a bit disconnected from the world in terms of its problems and suffering. They advertised a lot of progressive work environment thinking, but on the actual job site, it's the same business corporate environment, tons of overtime, just say yes, paying your dues, you're constantly talking up and contouring. There was also this dumbass statistic that gets constantly paraded. Since the higher the applicant rate is lower than Harvard's acceptance rate, therefore, it is harder to get hired here than it is to get into Harvard, and you're more elite than Harvard. Working a warehouse night shift for a large drink company. Working 16+ hours a day regularly. Started working 20 to 22-hour shifts on Fridays and holidays. Management told us, "It's your fault, you are working so many hours, work harder, and you'll leave faster." That's what hard work is. It was physical labor, walking, and picking up 10 to 70 pounds, every 15 to 30 seconds. We had one lunch break, and that's it. Screw that. When our management told us that we need to work harder, because corporate was on their backs about long hours, I knew I needed to leave. Hard work isn't forcing workers to basically kill themselves with 3 hours of sleep and one lunch break.